There's something you've learned that most people never had to. You learned how to keep going when everything inside you wanted to stop. You learned how to show up, perform, speak clearly, make decisions, and hold your life together while feeling almost nothing at all. And for a long time, that worked. It kept you safe. It kept you functional. It kept you from breaking down in places where breaking down wasn't allowed. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. You started noticing that the same skill that helped you survive started to feel like a prison. You can handle stress. You can solve problems. You can support others. But when it comes to your own feelings, there's just distance. A kind of quiet emptiness that never quite goes away. And the strangest part? You're not sure if you're supposed to feel bad about it. Because this numbness, it's been reliable. It's been there longer than most people in your life. If you've ever felt like you're living behind glass, watching your own life happen without really being in it, this isn't a flaw in you. It's a pattern, and that pattern has a history. It didn't start with you being broken. It started with you learning to survive in an environment that didn't teach you how to feel safely. What you're experiencing now isn't weakness. It's the after effect of a nervous system that was trained to endure, not to process. And that training runs deep. You can do almost anything. You've proven that. You show up on time. You meet expectations. You stay calm when others panic. People might even describe you as steady, reliable, grounded. But inside, there's a gap, a strange disconnection between what you do and what you feel. Or more accurately, between what you do and what you don't feel. Because the truth is, most of the time, you're not feeling much at all. You're functioning. And functioning feels like enough until someone asks you how you really are, and you realize you don't know. You can't answer that question with anything real because you stopped checking in with yourself a long time ago. This is what living in function mode feels like. You're present, but not fully. You're engaged, but from a distance. You can perform care, but you can't always feel it. And the part that makes this so confusing is that it doesn't look like a problem from the outside. You're not falling apart. You're not lashing out. You're just here, managing. And that can make you wonder if you're imagining the emptiness. If maybe this is just what adulthood feels like. But deep down, you know something's missing. You know because every now and then, you catch yourself watching other people laugh, cry, or get excited about something small, and you feel a pang of something you can't name. Not jealousy exactly, more like recognition of a language you used to speak but can no longer access. The question you might be asking yourself is, why? Why does feeling anything deeply seem so exhausting? Why does vulnerability feel like a threat? And why does staying emotionally distant feel safer than letting anyone, including yourself, get too close? The answer isn't that you're cold. It's not that you don't care. It's that your nervous system made a decision a long time ago. And that decision was this: emotions are not safe. When you grow up in an environment where emotions were too much, too complicated, or too risky to express, your brain doesn't interpret that as a temporary situation. It interprets it as the rule. If showing sadness led to dismissal, if expressing anger led to punishment, if being afraid made you a burden, your system learned to do something brilliant and devastating at the same time. It learned to shut down emotional signals before they became problems. Not because you were weak, but because you were smart, because you were trying to stay connected to the people you needed, even if that connection required you to disappear emotionally. This is a survival-based adaptation. Your nervous system wasn't trying to hurt you, it was trying to protect you. But here's the part that matters now. What protected you then is limiting you now. The same mechanism that helped you stay safe in an unpredictable environment is now keeping you from accessing your own emotional life. And because this adaptation happened so early, it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like who you are. It feels like your personality. But it's not. It's a pattern. And patterns, once understood, can shift. What often accompanies this kind of emotional shutdown is something psychologists call insecure attachment. If the people who were supposed to help you regulate your emotions were inconsistent, overwhelmed, or emotionally unavailable themselves, you never got the chance to learn that feelings could be safe. You learned instead that feelings were something you had to manage alone. And when you're a child managing feelings alone, the only tool you have is suppression. So you suppressed. And you got good at it. So good that now, years later, you can't always tell the difference between calm and numbness, between being okay and just being functional. The cost of this doesn't announce itself loudly. It's not dramatic. It doesn't show up as a crisis. It shows up in smaller, quieter moments that accumulate over time. It shows up when someone you love says, "I feel like I don't really know you," and you don't know how to respond because you're not sure you know yourself either. It shows up when you're in a moment that should feel meaningful, a celebration, a milestone, a moment of connection, and all you feel is a dull awareness that you should be feeling more. It shows up in the guilt you carry for not being more present, more enthusiastic, more emotionally available, even though you're doing everything you know how to do. It shows up in your relationships, not because you're a bad partner or a bad friend, but because there's a part of you that's always slightly out of reach. People sense it. They might not name it, but they feel it. And over time, that distance creates its own kind of loneliness. You're surrounded by people, but you're alone in your own experience. You want closeness, but closeness requires vulnerability. And vulnerability feels like standing on the edge of something with no ground beneath you. So you stay where it's safer. You stay in function mode, and the loneliness deepens. There's also the quiet shame that comes with this. The shame of feeling like you're doing something wrong by not feeling enough. The shame of wondering if you're capable of love, of joy, of grief, the way other people seem to be. The shame of thinking that maybe you're just broken in a way that can't be fixed. And that shame doesn't help. It just adds another layer of distance between you and yourself. Because now you're not just numb, you're numb and ashamed of being numb. What you're living with is a core internal conflict. On one side, there's the part of you that wants connection, that wants to feel close to people, that wants to be seen and known and loved for who you actually are. And on the other side, there's the part of you that has learned, through years of experience, that being seen is dangerous. That closeness leads to disappointment. That letting your guard down means getting hurt. So you exist in this constant push and pull. You want intimacy, but you protect against it. You want to feel, but feeling feels like too much. And this conflict doesn't resolve itself. It just runs in the background, quietly draining you. This is the paradox of survival mode. It keeps you safe from emotional overwhelm, but it also keeps you safe from emotional aliveness. It protects you from pain, but it also keeps you from joy, from connection, from meaning. And the longer you stay in it, the more normal it feels. The more it becomes your baseline. Until one day you realize you can't remember the last time you felt something fully. The last time you cried and meant it. The last time you laughed without performing. The last time you felt genuinely excited about anything. If this pattern doesn't change, it doesn't lead to a dramatic collapse. It leads to something quieter and harder to name. It leads to a life that feels like it's happening to someone else. A life where you're present, but not participating. Where you're alive, but not living. The relationships you build will always have a ceiling. A point beyond which you can't go because going deeper requires emotional availability you don't have access to. And the people in your life will feel that ceiling, even if they can't articulate it. They'll feel like there's a part of you they can never reach. Over time, this creates a specific kind of exhaustion. Not the exhaustion of doing too much, but the exhaustion of holding yourself together while feeling like you're disappearing. The exhaustion of performing okayness while carrying an emptiness you can't explain. And that exhaustion doesn't go away with rest, because it's not physical, it's existential. It's the fatigue of living a life that doesn't feel fully yours. There's also the confusion that comes with this. Because you don't have a clear problem. You're not in crisis, you're managing. And that makes it hard to ask for help, or even to know what you'd be asking for. How do you explain to someone that you're struggling when you're not struggling in a way that's visible? How do you say, "I don't feel anything," without sounding dramatic or disconnected from reality? So you don't say anything. You keep going, and the pattern continues. But here's what I want you to consider. What if the numbness you're experiencing isn't evidence that you're broken? What if it's evidence that you adapted? That you survived something that required you to shut down in order to keep going? Because that's what this is. This isn't a personality defect. This isn't you being emotionally incapable. This is your nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do in an environment where emotional expression wasn't safe. The survival skills you developed were contextual. They made sense in the environment you were in. But contexts change. You're not in that environment anymore. And the skills that helped you survive there are now preventing you from living fully here. That doesn't mean those skills were wrong. It means they were temporary. They were supposed to be temporary. But no one taught you how to put them down. No one taught you that it was safe to feel again. So you've been carrying them this entire time, not because you need them, but because you don't know what happens if you let them go. Reframing this as adaptation rather than failure changes everything. It removes the shame. It removes the idea that something is fundamentally wrong with you. It allows you to see yourself not as broken, but as someone who learned to protect themselves in the only way available at the time. And that protection worked. It kept you functional. It kept you stable. But now, it's time to learn something new. Not because you have to, but because you deserve to feel your own life. Learning to feel again doesn't mean opening the floodgates and letting everything in at once. It doesn't mean forcing yourself to cry or express emotions you don't have access to. It means learning to feel without flooding. It means building a middle ground between suppression and overwhelm. And that middle ground is where emotional regulation lives. Not the kind of regulation that shuts feelings down, but the kind that allows you to experience them in doses you can handle. This process is slow. It's not a switch you flip. It's a gradual thawing. It starts with noticing. Noticing when you're disconnected. Noticing when you're performing rather than feeling. Noticing when your body is trying to tell you something and you're overriding it. And instead of judging yourself for it, you just observe. You get curious. You ask, what am I protecting myself from right now? What feels unsafe about this moment? And you don't rush to fix it. You just notice. From there, you start experimenting with small, safe, emotional experiences. You let yourself feel something small: frustration, disappointment, a flicker of joy, and you stay with it for a few seconds before moving on. You practice not shutting it down immediately. You practice tolerating the discomfort of feeling without needing it to mean something or lead somewhere. You build capacity slowly, because your nervous system needs to learn that emotions won't destroy you, that you can feel something and still be okay. Boundaries become essential here, not just with other people, but with yourself. You learn to say, I can feel this much, but not more right now. You learn to pace yourself. You learn that healing doesn't require you to process everything at once. It requires you to process what you can handle today, and tomorrow, maybe a little more. This isn't avoidance, it's respect. Respect for your system and what it's been through. You also need to understand that you're allowed to take your time. There's no timeline for this. No deadline by which you need to be fully emotionally available. The numbness you're experiencing has a history. It didn't develop overnight, and it won't dissolve overnight. And that's okay. What matters more than speed is direction. Are you moving toward yourself or away from yourself? Are you building a relationship with your own emotional life, or are you still running from it? The answer to that question matters more than how fast you're moving. If you've made it this far, I want you to know something. You're not emotionally broken, you're survival trained, and there's a difference. Being survival trained means you developed skills in response to an environment that required them. It means you adapted. It means you're intelligent, resourceful, and capable. But it also means that those skills, as useful as they were, are no longer serving you the way they once did. And recognizing that isn't a failure. It's growth. It's the beginning of something new. You don't have to fix yourself. You don't have to become someone else. You just have to learn that the world you're in now is different from the world that taught you to shut down. And in this world, you're allowed to feel. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to be uncertain, messy, and human. You're allowed to not have it all together. And you're allowed to discover who you are when you're not just surviving anymore. This isn't a call to urgency. This is permission. Permission to be where you are. Permission to feel what you feel or don't feel. Permission to move slowly. Permission to be kind to yourself in a way that maybe no one ever taught you, because you've been strong for a long time. And strength is important, but so is softness, so is rest, so is letting yourself be held, even if that holding starts with you holding yourself. You survived, and that matters, but you don't have to stay in survival mode forever.